All right, boys and girls, here we go. Another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much to everyone out there, as always, for watching the show, for listening, however the hell you consume this. I truly appreciate you guys very, very much. Also, big shout out to sponsor of today's show, Sunny Reds, 1841 Aber Road, just down the way from Highmark Stadium. Got some karaoke going on there this Saturday. And I've said it before on the show. If you're a karaoke fan, whether you like to sing, whether you like to see other people sing, that place just absolutely pops when they have karaoke. DJ Jixter from 97 Rock does it. Great time. So make sure you guys go check that out. Sunny Reds, 1841 Ever Road on Saturday. Woo! Holy crap. We got a lot going on. And after weeks and weeks, month or two even, of what feels like nonstop draft talk, the moments have finally arrived. Most of you are listening to this, hopefully, on Thursday morning. If you're watching this maybe late Wednesday night, it's the draft, baby. We're here. We are finally here. I got a few final thoughts on some Bills items, including a few veterans and how it pertains to this draft. Plenty of draft stuff coming up, and I'm going to try to do it as quickly and compact as possible today so I don't waste a lot of your day. I know there's other people and things that you want to get to involving this draft as well. For that, though, real quick, most of you, if you live in Buffalo, by the way, here's some news for you. Draft party, NFL Buffalo Bills draft party going on tonight being Thursday. Resurgence Brewery downtown. This is kind of leading into some talk of Buffalo news here. $45, that gets you in the door. Not cheap, but what you get for that is outstanding. Drinks, obviously the most important thing for most people. Pizza from One Pie Pizza, which I've never had that before. I'm going to be there, and I'm really excited to try that pizza. Paula's Donuts. There's going to be some barbecue sauce tasting going on. Mafia Babes are doing a fundraiser, a 50-50 raffle for autism awareness. So there's a lot of really cool things going on, and it's hosted by WGR 550's Jeremy White and Joe DiBiase. So a lot going on there. It's going to be a great time. Should be a packed place, fun place to go watch the Bills in the first round in the NFL draft. $45 get you in with everything that I said. I'm going to be there, and I'm excited about that alone. But here's the cool part. I'm actually going to be doing a live show immediately after the first round of the draft concludes, which will probably be close to midnight. So this is going to be a late live edition of Talking Buffalo, but I'm going to be doing it live from Resurgence Brewery. Instant Bills NFL draft reactions. May have a couple people in the audience jumping on the show. But here's the coolest part, folks. So if you're a regular to the show, Joe from Queens, probably my most talked about recurring regular guest. He records with me every Sunday night. We do live on the video side. Podcast drops on Monday. Y'all know Joe from Queens. Does the show with me remotely. He lives in New York City every week. Well, he's going to be in town, and he's actually going to be there also at Resurgence. So live right after the draft, Talking Buffalo, Joe from Queens is going to be with me live in person. So again, if you happen to be in the area and you could get out, come to Resurgence. It's going to be a great time, a fun party. Come eat, come drink, come watch the draft, and come watch Talking Buffalo immediately after. And if you can't, just make sure you watch it on YouTube, Twitter, wherever you usually watch or listen to this podcast. So Joe from Queens is going to be with me live in person next episode. All right. As for today, getting into the show here, I got a few final thoughts, like I said, on a few Bills items, including a few veteran players and how I think this pertains to this draft. I'm going to head on a school that I know very well, and I think the Bills would be wise to hit on their prospect pool in this draft. Gun to my head, I'm going to list to you guys the top 5 most likely Bills first overall picks. This isn't necessarily a list of the 5 guys that I want the most. This is a list of the 5 guys that I think are most likely to become Buffalo Bills with that first pick. I'm going to run down a few non-first round players I like, a few guys that I'm quite frankly not very high on. And then I'm going to quickly at the end, I'm going to run down the results of my personal one and only solo mock draft. The others that I've done on here, they've been with guests, David Tilzer from Cover One, Anthony Prohaska from Cover One, Bruce Nolan from the Bruce Exclusive, and then just a couple days ago here with Aaron Quinn from Cover One. Those have been fun, but I haven't done my own mock. I did, and I'm just going to run down the results. Like I'm not going to go through the process. You're not going to see on the screen or hearing me describing the process. I've already done it. I'm just going to tell you the picks that I came away with. And here's a spoiler alert. I have not one, not two, but 3 trade ups for the Buffalo Bills in my one and only mock draft. So we're going to do that and then finish with a few like NFL overall draft predictions. So that's the format for today. Let's jump into things right now. Like I said, I don't want this. I'm going to try really hard to make sure this isn't a full hour episode. In terms of the draft, if you're expecting the Bills to trade from 30, you probably should expect that. Brandon Beane has only used his first pick in its original spot 2 times in his 7 drafts now with the Buffalo Bills, and none since 2021 when they took Greg Rizzo, which, by the way, that pick was also number 30, just like this year. So there's that. But I'd say that the Bills are probably not going to pick at 30. They can move up. They moved down last year. So everything literally is on the table. Again, last time they had picked 30, they actually took it and they kept it and they took Groot. So there's that. The Tre White signing. This intrigues me, maybe more than it should, because the contract that he has right now can mean anything. $2.2 million. So finally, Spot Rack got a hold of the actual numbers. Tre White re-signed last week. I shouldn't say re-signed. He signed because he came from Baltimore, but we didn't know the details until Wednesday morning. $2.2 million is guaranteed. So he's getting that money no matter what. A $3 million base, $3.8 million up to in incentives, and he's got a $2.8 million cap hit this year. That's for this contract, but he's also got some dead cap money left over from when they cut him. But when you look at those numbers and you peel it all back, to me, that could mean he's a pretty damn cheap CB2 for 2025, which would be probably a, I don't want to say a best case scenario, but it would definitely be a good scenario. If he's your starting corner in week 1 and he's got that salary, to me, that's a good deal. It's a really good deal. So it can mean that. It can mean that he is inactive insurance at a reasonable rate. And I say inactive insurance, and here's what I mean by that. Kind of like Kyrie Elam was to the Bills last year. Now, obviously, you hope that Tre will play better when he's given an opportunity. But what I mean by that is this. Much like Kyrie Elam, Tre White don't do special teams. He ain't playing no special teams. So one or two things are going to happen. Either Tre White is going to be out there starting, or almost certainly Tre White's going to be an healthy and active, hopefully a healthy and active. He's either starting or he ain't dressing. That's what I'm getting at here. That contract is perfectly fine for something like that. It's not like, say, Joe Bosa, who's getting like $12 million or something like that, where it's like, what are we doing here? How are you paying this guy that much money? He's not even dressing. That's not the case. Tre White's contract is still, relatively cheap enough that if he's insurance, he's quality, veteran, proven insurance in case Christian Benford and a rookie or even Dane Jackson, who the hell knows, or some veteran they haven't brought in yet, whoever started alongside Christian Benford or Christian Benford, one of those guys go down, you got Tre White who could come in, be active, and starts. I feel like it means that with the contract. And it also means that he can just be cutting camp. I mean, let's just call it what it is. If for whatever reason, Tre White comes to camp in late July and in early August and in practice, drills, a couple preseason games, he just looks like an absolute utter shell of his former self. The signing of that contract doesn't really prohibit anything from happening, including cutting him. You give him 2.2 million that's guaranteed. That's not enough money to say you are an absolute roster lock to make this team. Just like the 1-year contract that DeMar Hamlin got, I want to say it's somewhere around 2 million, most of it guaranteed or whatever. He's not guaranteed to make this team either. He could start or he could get cut. Same kind of deal with Tre White. And that's how I feel about everything financially. Um, Maybe there's a little teensy bit of homerism going on with what I'm saying right now, or at least hope with me. But I'm relatively optimistic when it comes to Tre White. I really am. Now, look, he stunk last year with the Rams. Make no mistake about it. Played 4 games with them. Trey Toast. He was out there getting Trey toasted really, really bad. He got cut after 4 games, 4 starts, 4 disasters. He got cut. Now, I truly believe, in part, it was a bad fit. I mean, he was being asked to play a lot of man, covering guys vertically, one-on-one all over the field. That's never really been what Tre White excels at. So I feel like he was being asked to do some things that he'd never really done or done well before. I also think that confidence was probably a factor, being uncomfortable. I mean, he spent his whole career up to that point with the Buffalo Bills, got cut because of injuries, because of the cap, didn't know what his future is going to be, signs with the Rams, new situation. Again, probably didn't have his full confidence back. And he was just a disaster with the Rams. That's what it was. Then he goes to Baltimore. He was all right. He was so-so. I think he played, I read like 30% of the snaps. Not great. Not a standout in a bad way either. And this was also his first season last year back from his second major injury. It reminds me of in 2022 when he came back with the Bills later in the season, and he was absolutely awful. Tre White, when he came back from that ACL that he hurt in 2021, he came back in 2022 in the second half of the season in the playoffs, and he was bad. It was just really bad. But then you went to the next year, the first month of 2023, and Tre White, I thought, was playing spectacularly. Like, he was playing as good as he had ever played before. And then he got hurt again, the Achilles, in the Miami game at the end of week 4. So maybe, again, being hopeful here perhaps, but maybe he'll be close to that. And right now, now that he's 2 years removed from the Achilles as opposed to 1 or almost 2 years, if he's all the way back, and I think there is a comfort level with Tre being here, he wants to be here. I mean, he was adamant about that when he talked to the media earlier this week. I think there's a comfort, there's a confidence in being in Buffalo and being in Buffalo again. He loves it here. He loves his team. His team loves him. The fans love him. The media loves him. All that shit can matter. All that shit can matter. And again, if it don't, he'll be gone. He'll be gone. I think best case, he's a good bridge and he could hold on the job. Like if the Bills take a corner in this draft, well, maybe he has a high ceiling, but not necessarily like a day one starting corner. A couple guys that come to my mind immediately, like in the Tre White best case scenario, would be somebody like Chavon Ravel Jr. or Benjamin Morrison, guys who are first round talents, really high ceilings, solid to potentially spectacular players, but they're coming off major injuries. Maybe they get eased into a role. Maybe Sean McDermott doesn't want to throw a rookie corner into the fire of week 1 of the regular season. You got guys like that. Or a guy like Darian Porter, more on him, by the way, in just a few. He's a high ceiling guy, but he may take some time to develop. And again, so for those reasons, Tre White to me is very intriguing. And at the very least, he raises the floor from Dane Jackson. So that's one thought that I've been having now over the last few days. Another is this. This draft may give you really strong hints, at the very least hints, on how this organization feels about Keon Coleman. It's no secret. I didn't love the Keon Coleman during the draft process last year. Just keeping it real. I didn't. I was not very high on the Bills drafting him. I didn't love the pick then. I don't love the pick now either. He's definitely showed some positive things from last year. No question about that. He flashed. I mean, there was those back-to-back games against Tennessee and Seattle. I believe it was like week 7 or 8. He had 4 catches for $125 against Tennessee. Then he followed it up. He had a really good game against Seattle. We all remember that bully touchdown that he had. That was a glimpse of what Keon Coleman could be. But I also think there's legit concerns about Keon Coleman. And Brandon Beane's been pretty damn vocal about it, man. Coming back from that injury, he looked rough last year coming back from that. 3 catches for 22 yards in 3 playoff games. That's just a joke. This is a guy you take your first overall pick, beginning of the second round. He's on the field, and he was back for at least a handful of weeks before the playoffs. You get to the playoffs, and he gives you 3 catches for 22 yards in 3 games. That shit just don't work, man. He needs to improve. He needs to improve. How much he's capable of doing right now? That's my point. That's the question. He can mature some. He can get stronger, and I think he will. But for the most part, I think Keon Coleman is who he is. What he does well, he's going to do well. What he doesn't, I don't think he's ever going to. He can make contested catches. He can make physical catches. He can be physical. He can be a good blocker. He can get downfield. You know, when a Josh Allen play breaks down and Josh is improvising, Keon Coleman's right there with them. Feels like those guys really get on the same page with that. He can make you miss a tackle with his strength and turn a short pass into a long touchdown. We've seen that last year in the Houston game, but he's not a very good route runner. He's not good at creating separation. So I feel like what the Bills do in this draft could be a reflection on what they think of him right now. Like in a world where you truly believe Keon Coleman is going to blossom, you could arrive that they got an emerging, like I said, blossoming Keon Coleman with a very, very good Khalil Shakir, who they just gave an extension to. They signed a guy that they like a lot, and Josh Palmer, and paid him pretty well, by the way. I mean, it's not like he got some cheap 1-year prove-it contract. Got a pretty good contract from the Bills. So you got him. And then you got a guy who at least did some good things late in the season in Curtis Samuel, not to mention the tight end who came into this league being, you know, he was supposed to be the big slot for the Buffalo Bills in Dalton Kincaid, first round pick from 2023. You don't not take a wide receiver. Like if they take a wide receiver at some point in this draft, I'm not saying that's dirt on Keon Coleman, but it shouldn't have to be like a real priority right now because you've got bigger needs on this team. I get it, but you take a guy, you try to develop him, see what happens. You're looking to add to the room. They certainly can add to this room. But I'll tell you what, if you take a wide receiver on day 2 of this draft, or to go even further, especially the first round, so the first round or maybe the second round, you take a wide receiver that early, and I think I'm going to lose even more confidence that the Bills have confidence in Keon Coleman after just 12 months. And I know a lot of people out there are going to disagree. Like they can take a wide receiver in the first round, and you're going to say that it ain't got nothing to do with Keon Coleman and how they feel about Keon Coleman and his future with this team. We'll agree to disagree. And in my opinion, taking a wide receiver early makes that pretty obvious. One last thing I want to get to before a quick break. I'm intrigued, really intrigued now, if this safety talk is just that, all talk. Because me, personally, I have felt throughout this process that it's all talk. And by all talk, I'm talking mock draft after mock draft after mock draft of guys taking a safety in the second round or at least day 2. And now recently, credible national folk are taking a safety in the first round. Malaki Starts. I've seen it 3 times in the last couple days, man. But I still feel like it's all talk, man. But I don't know anymore. I don't. I hope it's not all talk. I want to be clear about that. Like, I am very much in line with what Anthony Rahaska from Cover One said when he was on my show when we did a mock draft a few weeks ago. He said, and I love the context too. He says, I like Cole Bishop. I like Taylor Rapp. I don't really like Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop, meaning playing together out there at the same time. A bit too similar in their strengths for his liking and also for mine. Starks would be great here. Okay. I love Xavier Watts alongside either Rapp or Bishop. In a perfect world, get one of those guys and let Rapp and Bishop fight it out to see who starts alongside. And even if it's not Rapp, he has a role. He could play that dime safety role. They had a dime guy in that package 2 years ago. Rapp will come on the field with Poyer and Hyde. The Bills played that. That's a look that they can give. So it's not like whoever didn't start would be useless on this team by any means. But I just don't see it. I just don't see it personally. Sean is very high on Rapp. He has spoken glowingly of him, not just as a player, but as a leader. They loved Bishop last year in the draft process. They were ecstatic to get him in the second round, and I don't think they soured on him yet. In fairness to Cole Bishop, he did get hurt at camp, missed a lot of time. That was detrimental to his development as a rookie. And then he kind of got thrown into the fire when he came back, especially in the playoffs, and it showed. It showed. They also brought back DeMar Hamlin, who, the Bills like more than most fans and most media, certainly more than myself. Just hopefully he's fine on the roster. It's cool. Just hopefully they don't like him enough that he's actually going to be in the starting mix again. I don't want to see that. Mm-mm. And I like Forrest, the young player they signed from Washington as well. I'm not saying safety is not important. And again, me personally, I would not shy away from taking one early, whether it's the second round or even the first. I just feel Brandon Beane's going to conclude that it's too much of a luxury pick with their bigger and I think more glaring needs. So that's how I feel about that one in safeties. But it is a real fascinating talk. All right, going to take a quick break. Get back to a couple more items here. All right, here we go again. Draft is finally here. I am so excited. And again, a reminder, if you happen to be in the Buffalo area, you want to go to a fun draft party, hit up Resurgence Brewery, $45, eats, drinks, tons of people. Jeremy White, Joe DiBiase will be in the house. I'm going to be doing a live show right after the conclusion of round one. And I'm going to be joined live in person by Joe from Queens. Look, this is a great year. Another thought to go get Notre Dame's my squad. Okay. I've said this a lot during this process. I try to watch highlight clips. I try to read and listen and watch, the draft guys that I have a lot of trust in. I put a lot of stock into what they say. Guys like Joe Marino, guys like Chris Trapasso, guys like Eric Turner, Anthony Rohaska, Bruce Nolan, and so on. They help form my opinions. I don't necessarily agree with everything they say, but I put a lot of stock into their opinions. But when it comes to anybody who's a Notre Dame prospect, I'll plant my flag in the ground. I watch that team play every single game, every week, every game. So I know Notre Dame players, and I think this is a great year for the Bills to go out and get some Notre Dame guys. I'm not advocating that they draft all four of them, but there's four guys I really like that I think are great fits. Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts, the tight end Mitchell Evans, and linebacker Jack Kaiser. Again, Notre Dame guy, watch these guys all the time. They can all be great fits. Morrison, a 3-year starter, a leader, plays zone well, man coverage very well, 6 interceptions in 2022. The hip injury, which derailed him last year, I think that's what's stopping him from being a first-round pick, and not just a first-round pick, a guy who probably goes in the top 20 to 25. Going back to the Tre White thing, go get you Morrison in the second round. And if it takes a little longer to get him fully up to speed and you don't want to throw him out there right away, that's why I got Tre White. But I think long-term Morrison could be a big star. And speaking of potential big stars, Xavier Watts, 6 interceptions at free safety last year, 13 in his last 2 years. Dude is a ball freaking hawk. I personally would sprint, and I mean sprint, to the podium, hypothetically speaking, of course, to take him at pick 56 if he was on the board. Hell, I would even consider moving up to like the late 40s, trading up and go getting Xavier Watts. He's a playmaker, man. Kyle Hamilton, all-pro safety for the Ravens, kind of feels that same school too, former Notre Damer. I kind of get those same vibes. Nate Gary on the show last week kind of compared him to Jarius Bird. I love it. Go give me a playmaker in that secondary all day, every day. Mitchell Evans, 6'5", 253 pounds. He could be potentially your long-term eventual Dawson Knox replacement. Dawson Knox is probably going to be in his last year unless he takes a massive pay cut again or they rework something. As things stand right now, this is probably Dawson Knox's last year under contract with the Bills. Certainly his last year under this contract. Evans is a good blocker. He's a good blocker, very willing blocker, aggressive blocker, and he caught 43 passes last year. I think he'd be a great tight end, too, behind Dalton Kincaid. More of an inline guy, too, with the kind of skill set that you'd be looking for. And then with Jack Kaiser, linebacker, smart player, heady player, a leader. Felt like he was at Notre Dame for like 19 years. I look at this guy, he could be a good reserve linebacker, play special teams. He could be that kind of player. And I look at the reserve linebackers right now outside of Dorian Williams, and nobody's a lock. And I've said this. Joe Andreessen, not a lock. Olafosio, the fifth rounder, he could turn out to be something, but I don't even think he's a lock to make this team. Bale Inspector is certainly no lock to make this team. So those guys could be good fits. Gun to my head, my top 5 most likely picks for the Buffalo Bills here in this draft. The first pick, I should say, in this draft. And I want to reiterate what I said earlier. This isn't my number 5 through 1. Boy, I want this player more than anyone else. No, I'm saying, if my life depends on getting one of these 5 guys as the Bills' likely first round pick or first pick overall, if they happen to trade down, that's what I'm talking about. Number 5, I got Kenneth Grant from Michigan, 2.5 down, big ass defensive tackle, solid run anchor. I think he could do for the Bills what they wish DaQuan Jones could still do, but really can't. But the thing is, and the only reason why I only have him at 5, because there's a big ass need. If you can upgrade over DaQuan Jones, if you could get a younger, perhaps better version of DaQuan Jones, that would be a big priority. Arguably the biggest priority on this football team right now. But I have him at number 5 because I don't think he's going to fall to 30. If you're going to go get him, you're going to have to trade up no earlier than the mid-20s, and you might have to go into the early 20s to go get him. I'd say starting all the way like pick 19 with Pittsburgh, he could be in play. And by the time you get to 25 at Houston, 26 with the Rams, you got to go do it then if he's even available at that point. So he's 5. Number 4, and this would shock a lot of people, I think, anyway. Nick Scorton, a defensive edge. He'd be the head scratcher for most Bills fans. I have no question about it. But I think pretty strongly, actually, that the Bills like this kid. And I think edge is very much in play for this season, for this draft. Again, it's not just about the future or about the present. It's also about the future. And Joey Bosa, a one-year guy who I don't even know that you can count on him for giving you a full year at this point. A.J. Epinesa in the last year of his contract. Michael Hoyt going to be suspended for the first 6 games, and I'm not really sure he's a starting edge. He's more of a kind of like a chess piece. I think that'll play a lot, but being moved around. I think Scorton could be a really solid edge player. 5 sacks last year, 10 the year before that. The big boy. He's an asset in the run stuffing game. I feel like he could be a souped up version, and I know people ain't going to like hearing this, but he could be a souped up version of A.J. Epinesa, but with more upside, potentially significantly more upside. So I think edge is in play. 3, and I'm going to be honest, man, this has changed in the past 24 hours, literally. I've changed my list in the last 24 hours. Malaki Starts has went from not probably being in my top 10 or 15 to number 3. Seriously. And Dane Brugler from The Athletic, Pete Schrager from ESPN, Ben Albright today, Wednesday, all have Starks going to them to Buffalo in the first round of their mock drafts. And those guys are all credible for me, especially Ben Albright. At the very least, that's got my attention. That's definitely got my attention. We'll break his game down endlessly if it happens, but for now, all I'm just going to say is dude is a ball player. I just haven't thought about him because I did not think safety was going to be a play at 30. If you take Albright, Schrager, Brugler at their word, it is in play. Number two, and this might be my personal preference here that I would like the most, but number two on my list is Derek Harmon. I think he's got the highest ceiling of these type of players on the defensive line, though, it always comes with a risk. High ceiling usually comes with a risk, and injury concerns may drop him to a point where the Bills can go up to, say, the mid-20s, going back to Green Bay at 23, Minnesota at 24, Houston at 25, maybe somewhere around that area, and you could go get them. I think it's very realistic, too. It's very realistic that A, Harmon could be there in the earlier to mid-20s, and B, the Bills identify him as a need and a ceiling player who has star potential, Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowl potential, that it's realistic that Brandon Beane can want to go up and get him. He can play the one tech, he can play the three tech, he can stay on the field a lot. I would love this pick. And again, my personal feelings aside, I think it's heavily on Brandon Beane's radar if he gets to around that 23 or 24 pick. But he's not number one on my list. Number one on my list is a guy that you've heard a lot about in mock drafts, probably heard a lot about Perry at this point, and that's the cornerback Trey Amos. If the Bills stay at 30, or maybe they move up one or two spots, maybe even move down one or two spots, and they want what feels like the cleanest, safest, most prototypical corner in this draft for them at around this spot, I think it's definitely Trey Amos. If I was a betting man, he'd be my play, and I'd be all for it, especially if Harmon is gone. I think I'd take Amos, I'll tell you what. I think I would take Trey Amos right now over Kenneth Grant. That's just me personally, but I would. A few specific non-first round guys I'd love in Buffalo, not counting my Notre Dame guys because I already talked about them. And these are non-first round guys. Joshua Farmer, defensive tackle, versatile. He can be on the field. He's a 2.5 down run defender. I think he's a second round pick for sure. I like him. Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. He's been picked in a couple of my Bills mock drafts here over the last month. Early day 3 guy, likely 4th round. Maybe gets into the late 3rd. It could be a huge draft steal, like both literally and figuratively. A few day 2 wide receivers, where maybe one creaks to early day 3 that I like a lot. Jalen Royals, like him a ton. Jaden Higgins, Kyle Williams. I also like Isaac Tesla from Arkansas. If you get to the late rounds, defensive edge, I like sort of a defensive edge. I don't really know what he is, but Q Robbins from Alabama, defensive lineman, a core 4-team special team guy. Like he'll play all special teams. You could use a guy like that on your roster. If you want to get to a later round, roll the dice kind of player with some upside, but he could just as easily be out of the league in 2-3 years. Johnny Walker Jr. from Missouri. And Sean Dolak, I've talked about him endlessly on this show, obviously for good reasons. He's going to be in the NFL. I'd bet on it. And just like I talked about with Jack Kaiser, he could be a productive backup linebacker and really core special teams guy that you could count on. I'd be ecstatic if Sean Dolak. And of course, it'd be a great, Buffalo story for him to come here, but it also would be a great football story too. Jacob Harris, corner, last guy here. If the Bills go edge and defensive tackle with the first picks, which absolutely could happen, and you're talking about corner, late day 2 or late second round, maybe you get back into the 3rd, Jacob Harris could be a fun guy that's targeted later on day 2. So there's that. Few guys that don't excite me nearly as much as some of the others. Maxwell Hairston, the corner from Kentucky, and I don't dislike him, so we're clear, all right? It's just that I like a handful of other corners better. I like Amos better. I like Ravel Jr. better. I like Morrison better. I like Will Johnson, who I don't really think is going to be around, although rumors are circulating about him leaking or dripping down the board because of injuries. Still, I like all those guys better than Hairston is what I'm getting at. I love his speed, and he's got great playmaking ability. I don't love his size. He's also very handsy from everything I've learned, a Kyrie Elam trait that I'm just I'm not fond of. I just would go in another direction at corner. Luther Burden the third, wide receiver. Again, it's not that I'm not a fan of his. I'm just not a fan of his in the first round or the early second round. One other guy, Shamar Stewart. Don't care how gifted you are. If you're an edge rusher, I don't care how physically, if you're crafted a Greek god, how fast you are. I don't care about any of those traits. If you're an edge rusher and you've had 1.5 sacks in each of your last 3 seasons and you're a first round lock, that shit is just straight up too rich for my blood. Two more things here, then we're done. I want to get to my final and my only personal Bills mock draft. All right. So let me pull that up here. I'll pull it up on the video side of the screen so you can see it visually. Audioly, is that even a word? On the audio side, I will quickly explain it because I have 3 trades. And again, I'm not going to go through the process of it. I'm just going to tell you what I did and briefly why. 3 trades. All right. Bills, first up, I moved up. I gave up 30, 56, which is my second round pick, and 177. And I got 23 and 87. And by the way, this was a trade with the Green Bay Packers. So I got 23 and 87. I gave up 30, 56, and 177. And just so we're clear too, I didn't manipulate any, trade values. These are all either even draft chart trade values or actually the Bills would be giving up a little bit more per the value chart. So I didn't rip any team off. I didn't force any trades. That said, I move up to 23 and I pick Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon is my first round pick. The defensive tackle from Oregon. Just talked about him a few minutes ago. I think if you get in that range where you could go get an impactful player like him, put him alongside Ed Oliver, Joe Bosa, Greg Rizzo, and others, to me, that would just feel like an absolute no-brainer. So although I was leaning throughout this process cornerback first, throughout most of this draft process, Derek Harmon being there at pick 23, I got to go up and I had to go get him. Now, with my next pick, I have another trade up. I traded up with Seattle and I gave up picks 62. So I moved up 12. I went from 62 to 50 here. All right. I gave up 62, 109, which is my first fourth, and 173, which is the fifth, for 50 and 175, which again, trade value chart, perfect trade value. So I go all the way up to 50, get 175, and trade 62, 109, 173. And with that pick, I took a cornerback, Darian Porter from Iowa State. Going all the way back to the beginning of the show, the Tre White factor. I think Darian Porter has all the tools to be a fantastic starting corner in the NFL. I'm just not sold that he's going to be a week 1 as a rookie starting solid cornerback in the NFL. And that's okay. This is not about just 2025. Get Porter now, who I think, again, a real high ceiling type of corner. Let Tre White start until it's figured out. And now you just got a day 1 impactful defensive tackle and hopefully a starting corner for the next 3 to 4 years with your first 2 picks. All right, my next pick after my trades is 87 because that's a pick I moved up when I moved up for 1 and gave up my second and my 1, then I got the third back. So I'm on the board at 87 and I went with a wide receiver. So again, going back to the show, I just total different type of player, literally a total different type of player. But again, I'm just not all that sold right now on Keon Coleman. I want more weapons and I want them earlier. And I took one. Kyle Williams, wide receiver, Washington State. 5'11", 190. He ran a 4.4 40, caught 70 passes for just under 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns last year at Washington State. He's fast as shit, obviously. He's quick off the line. He can separate early. He needs to get stronger. He's a shitty blocker. He has no special teams value. Sounds an awful lot like Curtis Samuel, doesn't it? Because that's kind of my point. He could become a better and cheaper version of Curtis Samuel by 2026. So if you could go get a better, cheaper version of Curtis Samuel with your 87th pick overall in the draft, I'm going to jump on that. So there you go. Wide receiver Kyle Williams. Next, pick 132. And this was my last of 3 different trade ups. I traded up with the Tennessee Titans and I gave up, which by the way, I should have said, I don't know if I did. Seattle was a team that I had traded up for in round two to go get Darian Porter. And then I took Kyle Williams at 87. My last trade up was with the Tennessee Titans. All right. So what did I do here? I gave up 132 and I gave up 175 to move up 12 spots to 120. And with the 12 spots that I moved up for with the Titans, I took a linebacker, Chris Paul Jr., Pool Paul. Again, good linebacker, potential starter long term, but a special teams guy. You can play special teams right away and you could get more out of him. You know, Christian Benford was picked somewhere around this frame. Dorian Williams somewhere around this frame. This is a little bit, lower for Paul, but I like this pick a lot. I like the player a lot. I think he's got a good ceiling, potential to be a real good player. Matt Milano, of course, on the last year of his deal. So lots of reasons I take Paul. And then at pick 169, one of the few picks I actually kept in this draft, I took another linebacker. Talked about him earlier. Jack Kaiser, Notre Dame at pick 169. Same reasons, folks. Good reserve quality linebacker, can play special teams. Bale Inspector, I don't think is going to be on this football team. I love Joe Andreessen. I don't think it's a lock that he's going to be on this team. There's a path to the roster for Jack Kaiser at pick 169. Pick 170, I really wanted to go back to the Notre Dame well, like I talked about earlier in the show. However, Mitchell was gone. But I want a tight end. I took Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech. 6'5", 253, old school tight end. Not as much of a gifted pass catcher, but he's a really good blocker. He also spent 3 years at Yale, so he's smart. You know, Sean McDermott loves that shit. And then with my last pick, it was pick 206. Took a running back there, Rashad Smith from SMU. Explosive dude, needs to develop way better patience and vision. Like he runs ahead of his blocks. Not a trustworthy, consistent running back right now, but he's got traits. He's got skills. I think he's worth a late round pick on just for the upside alone. Again, nothing to do with James Cook. Let's get that, don't get that twisted, but high ceiling potential type of late round hit I see in Rashard Smith. So there you go. There's my draft. Derek Harmon, defensive tackle. Darian Porter, corner. Kyle Williams, wide receiver. Chris Paul Jr., linebacker. Jack Kaiser, a linebacker. Jackson Hawes, a tight end. Rashad Smith, a running back. 7 picks instead of 10. Am I correct there? Yeah, I took 7 guys because of the trade ups. I didn't use all 10 picks. And I think 6 of them pretty much would be roster locks. Well, 5 would be roster locks. Kaiser, I wouldn't call a lock to make the team. Rashard Smith obviously wouldn't be a lock to make the team either. In fact, probably wouldn't make the team. He's a practice squad type player. But that would be my mock draft. I'll throw it up on Twitter. It's the one that you could hold me accountable for. And again, ballsy if nothing else. I traded up 3 times and the trade value matched every time. And you can go get Derek Harmon in the first, and then you can go get Darian Porter in the second. To me, that's a big W. Let's wrap up with a couple general NFL draft predictions that I have. One of them, I don't think Shedeur Sanders ends up being one of the first 3 quarterbacks taken. Forget about the first 2. Ward's definitely going first overall. I think Jackson Dart's going ahead of Sanders at this point. And I also think either Tyler Show or Jalen Milroe, one of those 2 guys are going to go ahead of Sanders. I think Sanders' attitude issues are a real thing. And I don't think he's good enough to be as confident as Daddy was at the end of the day. So I got 3 quarterbacks going ahead of him. One of them is another prediction, draft shocker. I think Jackson Dart goes in the top 10. Like I see either the Raiders all the way at 6 or the Saints at 9. One of those 2 teams I could see Jackson Dart going to. I definitely don't think he gets any further than Pittsburgh at 21. That's as far as the fall would go. But I think he's going to go, like last year, Penix was the 8th overall pick. We're like, what? I think Jackson Dart could be that guy this year. Raiders or Saints. As many as 8 edge rushers are going to go in the first round. Abdul Carter, Jelon Walker, Green, Shamar Stewart, even though I don't like that pick, Mikael Williams, they're locks. Locks. Donovan Ezeraku, James Pierce Jr., Landon Johnson, Nick Gordon, who I talked about earlier. Those guys are all possibilities to go in the first round as well. Which would be interesting, by the way. If a guy like Donovan Ezeraku or James Pierce Jr. falls to the late 20s, do the Bills feel good enough about them to move up? That's definitely interesting. Last one. I don't even know if this is a shock anymore because Ashton Jeanty is definitely going somewhere in the top 10. I'm predicting he's going to end up with the Chicago Bears. However, ain't going to be at 10. The Bears they're picking at 10. They ain't going to be there at 10. They're going to move up. They're going to have to move up to go get him. The Jets at 7, Carolina at 8, maybe even Jacksonville, who could take Jeanty himself at 5. Definitely a possibility. But man, Ben Johnson having Jeanty, Caleb Williams, and the receivers that they got right now, that would be really, really fun. And I'm sure Chicago would love, love, love to get their hands on them. Anyway, all right, that's going to do it for this show. Again, thank you so much for listening, for watching. This is going to be a very interesting draft because I think the Bills at the end of the day have two positions that I would say are equal needs. Defensive tackle, especially if it's a one tech, and corner. Wide receiver and safety are secondary. Let me take that back. Wide receiver is a secondary need. Safety feels like a luxury, but it feels like one, but in reality, it's not. And boy, oh boy, is the last week buzz going strong, maybe stronger than any other position about the Bills with safety. Starks, Watts, I'd be pumped about either of them. Again, first round of the draft, if most of you are listening or watching this on Thursday, going live, Resurgence with Joe from Queens immediately following the first round. It's going to be a late one, folks, but going to be fun. Thank you very much. Talk to you, well, I guess later tonight.